Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. I'm going to call this meeting of the Small Business Development Committee to order. And I think our first order of business will be for Miss Lisa to open us up with prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for affording us yet another opportunity to be here today to do the business of the people of the great state of Georgia. Pray that you would afford us wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage as we go about our business for today. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen. Representative Hagan, thank you so much for that. Thank you. Anyway, Ben, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Excuse me. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate y'all's time today, and thank y'all for having us. So I'm Ben Coward. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs at Georgia Retailers. Georgia Retailers is a trade association representing retailers large and small throughout the state for more than 60 years. And today we're here to have a conversation with you guys about a growing issue in the retail industry, that is organized retail crime, or ORC. We hope today's presentation will help inform around the issue and show you some of the things that retailers are doing to facilitate partnerships and combat ORC throughout the state. So what we're talking about in organized retail crime is very different from what most people think of retail theft or shoplifting. So organized retail crime is more like large-scale theft of retail merchandise with the intent to sell for financial gain. And this involves kind of sophisticated criminal enterprises, many times gangs or other criminal organizations. So very different from the person that's shoplifting for personal use. So this is something that, according to a study done in 2001 by Buy Safe America, costs Georgia retailers about $1.6 billion annually, 326 million worth of annual loss in sales tax dollars, and cost about 17,000 jobs for Georgians annually. So that study also had that retailers reported a 76% had reported that they had experienced physical assault by employees by ORC offenders, and 41% of those reported offenders using a weapon. So it's really become a large issue, and it's becoming a more violent issue over the past couple of years. So today I have with me Chad McManus and Tim Conklin. Both are asset protection, loss prevention for their day jobs, but they also serve on the Georgia Retailers Organized Crime Alliance Council. So they're going to talk with you a little bit more about the rise in ORC, what Georgia Retailers Organized Crime Alliance, or GROC, does, and how we're facilitating these partnerships throughout the state to combat organized retail crime. And I'll turn it over to Chad.
Chad, before you start, I've messed up a little bit. I need to call on Chairman Williams to make a special announcement.
I wanted to introduce a friend of mine, a family friend of mine, Pilcher Thornton, sitting on the front row. He's a Georgia Southern student, and he is studying communication and has been following me the last 2 days, and he's very interested in politics, and I told him to run as hard as he could away. But y'all please help me welcome Pilcher Thornton from Cordell, Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Chad, go ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yes, sir. So good morning. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to kind of sit here and talk with you a little bit about ORC. Just to give you a little background, I'm a senior manager of asset protection for a cell phone carrier. I won't divide the room and find out who's AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, because I don't want to get any, hey, who's better than each other. But I've been with the organization for 15 years in asset protection. For my career, I've been with asset protection for over 35 years. So came out of college and jumped right into retail asset protection. So been in the industry for quite some time. Down here in Georgia, grew up in Indiana, relocated down here, and over the many years that I've been here in the state of Georgia, as Ben said, we've kind of seen what we used to call shoplifting develop into what we're dealing with now, which is organized retail crime. Like Ben said, it's gangs and groups targeting our retailers, coming in, trying to steal mass amount of quantities. We're not talking about a person that comes in and maybe steals a razor or some food that they need, but I'm sure you've seen on the news, the guy walks in to name the retailer and they load up a cart full of drills, a cart full of TVs, and they push it out the door. And so what they're doing with that merchandise is turning around and reselling it to a fence or some other organization that's involved in the behavior as well too, selling that product in turn for, you know, other activities that they may be involved in. So in our world of asset protection, it's become a big issue for us, trying to protect our people, protect our brand, and protect our customers dealing with these situations. So what we did back in 2008, we had kind of a coalition of retailers that came together around smash and grab. So I don't know if anybody in the room remembers, but there was some legislation that was passed back in 2008 around the smash and grab policies and procedures, and you know, things that were going on in the city of Atlanta with juveniles, smash and grab. So we kind of came together as an organization at that time, worked with our legislative partners to kind of get that passed, and that in turn kind of formed an alliance or a council of loss prevention professionals that get together and talk about different things that are happening. Fast forward 14 years later, we sit here today still doing the same thing. We've evolved a little bit more into an organized crime alliance, which, just to kind of give you an example of what we do, is we're law enforcement and retailer investigators that are partnering to try to go after these type of organized retail crime cases. So what we found out back in 2008 was law enforcement was doing their deal. They were going after the criminals that were impacting their jurisdictions. Retail asset protection people were doing their deal, going after you know, criminals to protect their brand, but we weren't talking. So, you know, we had resources, law enforcement had resources. Today, law enforcement resources are a little strapped, so that's why it's even more important, this alliance that we deal with our partners over there. But we just weren't communicating. So the point of our alliance was to kind of bring together those two entities and start talking about the things that were impacting us in the business. So we have a council of about 15 individuals that sit on what we call the Georgia Retailers Loss Prevention Council. It's a mix of law enforcement and retailers. And then we have the larger alliance, which is the Organized Crime Alliance, of over 600 people in the state of Georgia and the Southeast that are engaged in investigating retail crime. One of our goals in that organization, and Tim will talk a little bit about some of the other things that we do, but like I said, one of our goals was to bring partnerships together and start talking about these investigations and these cases and the impacts that we were seeing with organized retail crime. So we do that. We feel we do that really well as we've grown the alliance over the years, and we see a lot of positive results as far as arrests being made by law enforcement in partnership with us at the Organized Crime Alliance. We do have a website platform. I think it may reference a little bit of that in the information today, but we have a platform that we share with our law enforcement partners. We have the ability to share information, communicate. We get together for monthly meetings where we talk about different investigations and cases that we're dealing with.
That's awesome that they're saving 50%, but that impacts all of us from a tax perspective and also from an integrity perspective. While you might look at big box retailers or cell phone carriers, that might not be an issue if you buy a stolen shirt, because maybe it might not have, like, that shirt's not going to hurt you when you put it on if it was held somewhere in a certain way. However, there are pharmaceuticals and a lot of different other things that these groups target, and those things, you know, they have shelf lives, they had to be stored in a proper manner. And when you get to the fences, who are the individuals that kind of prey on the boosters, when you get to the fence organizations, they don't care what they're selling. They're just there to make money. So they'll sell a pharmaceutical, a T-shirt, a drill tomorrow, and they're there to monetize it. And I do say pray, and I mean that wholeheartedly, because when we see the booster community, so the individuals that come into our stores and steal, they're being fueled by a lot of different causes. Some things are drug dependency, some things are socioeconomical statuses, and a lot of different factors play into that. But these fences, which can be individuals or groups of individuals, are saying things like, hey, here's a list, here's $100 up front, you know, and you go just steal these couple of things, come back, I'll give you the rest of the money. And ultimately, that fits a need that individual is willing to then go out and do, kind of keeping that perpetuating crime cycle going. So then they bring it back to the fence and they sell it. So where does it all come together with G-Rock? A couple of things that we do is, one, from an intel sharing standpoint. Intel in the law enforcement and the retail community is somewhat sensitive. From the law enforcement perspective, sensitive to what they can share. From a retail perspective, it's sensitive to what we can share from a proprietary standpoint. But this form and this ability, this platform allows us to have a venue to come together that we know, one, all the individuals are vetted that are through there because they have to be part of the platform. Two, it's an environment where, there's no screen scraping and things like that. So everyone feels comfortable to share. And what we found through that is we found common suspects that are hitting multiple retailers. We found multiple jurisdictions that are looking and investigating, using resources to look after the same suspect, but each of them didn't know. And we bridge that gap of information. So we take suspect A that's being investigated by 7 different jurisdictions, and hey, this person knows who this person is. You can get with them from this, and then we're able to look at those charges and see, okay, how can we work a better case, right? Something that's going to be more fruitful from a prosecution standpoint, or maybe it's just intel generated, where now we know who's doing it, where they're doing it, and then we can kind of build the investigation from there. So we do that on a monthly basis. There is some uplift to it. You got to plan it. You got to get the people to attend. Our biggest charge, if you will, is to try to increase the law enforcement engagement because of what, like Chad said and Ben referenced, the resources continue to diminish in a lot of different ways. But with this venue and with this aspect of one property crimes detective that's investigating a lot of different individuals, it gives them an ability to identify some of these individuals and to build stronger cases and partnerships across law enforcement officials and retailers. So aside from the intel sharing, we started what we call it in the industry a blitz, but that is basically just a proactive operation that we do jointly with law enforcement and retailers. So simply put, retailers that work in asset protection show up at the mall. Law enforcement provides some support, whether that be vehicles, undercover officers, and then we collaborate throughout the day, talking about activity that we see, offenders that come into the property, and we try to resolve that activity with that law enforcement agency that day. They've been very successful. We've done them in several jurisdictions throughout this state and then also throughout the United States. And it's a proactive way. And the way we do it, or the way we target, or where we pick the location, is based on the retailer data and then also calls for service for law enforcement to try to pinpoint the right days, the right mall, and the right times to put the resources into it. And we're trying to target the larger fish, as we would call it, or the individuals that are stealing on a multiple day basis, impacting multiple retailers. And that way we can really identify what they're doing with the product and how we can disrupt that activity. So those are the two activities that I want to talk that we kind of do to engage the law enforcement community.
Thank you, Tim. And I do want to mention, and we're happy to take questions on anything, but I do want to mention there are 2 pieces of legislation that are out right now that directly are related to organized retail crime. One of those is in the budget, and I appreciate the work y'all did on the supplemental budget. And there was a little bit of funds in there for the AG's office, but I really want to thank Attorney General Chris Carr for all the work that he's been doing on collaborating with retailers. We met earlier this fall and talked about different issues and ways that we can all work together to combat it. And one of the things we came up with was he's got a budget request in for a new organized retail crime and cyber prosecution unit within his office, and there's money in the governor's budget for that, and we just ask for your favorable consideration when it comes to that budget. The other is there's Senate Bill 472 by John Albers. This is a cleanup bill to the Informed Consumers Act that passed, I believe it was 2 years ago. What this did was require some different reporting from online marketplaces. So what we've seen over the past couple years is that the fences are using online marketplaces to fence these stolen products. So it required some different reporting from online marketplaces. Since that's been implemented, though, we've realized that majority of what is considered possibly stolen goods that's out there have moved from your traditional online marketplaces where a transaction can happen to more of like your marketplaces that facilitate off-site transactions. So somebody puts something up for sold, and then you have to go meet them in person. So this cleanup language, it would just incorporate all online marketplaces into that reporting requirements. But just if that gets out of the Senate, we'd ask for the House's favorable consideration on that. But happy to answer any questions around the issue. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, you got a bunch of questions. Representative Lott, I think you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here with us today. I just had a couple questions on things that you had mentioned. So when we see these, this is my limited knowledge of your industry here, but when I see these on TV or on social media where they're posting some video, a lot of times folks are running in, they're not hiding their face, they're not doing anything. What is the possibility? Like how easy is it for you to find the folks when you see these mass groups come in and do these smash and grabs, I guess is what they would call those. And so that would be my first question is, I can see their face, that somebody knows these people, and I do realize that sometimes they go into different towns to do these things. That would be one question. How do you find these folks? How easy is it to find these folks? And then two, how much are we using social media? And I ask this question because in my community lately, my sheriff has been posting like every picture of a Walmart, just a one-off, not even the big stuff I see on TV, or on some of these other posts, but these one-offs, and then it is 24 hours, and we know these people. Like, so kind of what are you doing in social media? How are we kind of exposing these people? And then how long does it take you to find these folks, or do you never find these folks? The ones I see going into the big expensive pocketbook stores and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll take that part. I think it's twofold. It might not be as hard to identify the individuals. Finding them, there's a variety of different factors there. And then the biggest challenge is some type of justice coming after the identification. So some type of charge, a warrant, prosecution, restitution. Getting them through that full process is very difficult. For a lot of different factors, especially as they start to move jurisdictional lines. The groups that you're referring to, they collaborate and they actually communicate this way, and they do these style of attacks because the goal is if one gets caught, all don't get caught. Because it is a group mentality, right? Because if you can catch maybe one or two of the 15, but maybe not all 15, and then ultimately the whole group ends up benefiting from that raid or that theft that occurs. The other part is when you see a lot of these blitz attacks, or when you see the smash and grab would be actually like smashing the glass. Otherwise, it would be like a grab and run where they just run in and grab from the racks and stuff. But when you see a lot of those, a lot of it is actually adult offenders driving the juveniles into the stores. A lot of it, that occurs. And the reason being, you identify them when they get arrested, who's called to come get them? It's the same person that drove them to the crime. And they realize that. Specifically in the state of Georgia, I have several different states that I see over, but specifically in the state of Georgia, that is a huge trend that we see, where adult offenders realize that there may be a consequence for them, but from a juvenile perspective, it's very difficult for there to be a consequence, and so they leverage that aspect of it. Hopefully that answers.
All right. Representative Washburn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for your work on this. As everybody at the table, I think we are appalled at what we're seeing with all of that. I am curious, and I'm assuming that when arrests are made, my question is, do you get successful prosecutions?
Yeah, that's a good one for you because you're dealing.
All right.
I'll take a question eventually, but Tim's.
So successful prosecution. I have altered my definition of success because there's so many different factors that play into today. The level of theft, the criminal record, all of those aspects. Ultimately, our goal is recovery because we're ultimately trying to make as a retailer, we're trying to make the goal us whole from a monetary standpoint. That could be done through a recovery of merchandise or through restitution through the court process. Do we see the charges that the individuals are charged with, then them upholding those at a not most of the time. Most of the time, there is some type of plea or deal that is taken out, and then, and it really depends on the amount of charges the individual has. But I would say the majority of the time, it is a deferred prosecution or a very low penalty charge that they are convicted of.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that being the case, do they go right back out on the street and go right back into business?
Absolutely. Sometimes the same day, depending on the state. Depending on if they do get a bail or if they just get released on their own recognizance. But we definitely see subjects coming in the same day that we've arrested them, actually, at the stores, coming back that night.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, who's Representative Martinez?
Thank you for being here. 1.6 billion loss to the state of Georgia. That's amazing. That's a big loss for our state. Sales tax loss for our community. That's items that are not being sold. My question to you is, we see it on TV. We see what's going on in San Francisco, even here in Buckhead this past year, where the perpetrators went to the store and they did what you just said. They walked in there with a cart, and the employees are not able to do anything. They just stand there, and if they do something, some of them get fired. Is that correct? My question to you is, and I know it's a local issue, some of these, mayors or sheriffs don't prosecute these folks, but what can we do? I know you're working with the AG, and I know you got a Senate bill working, but what can we continue to do as far as legislation here in the state to protect our businesses and even our communities? Because some of these stores, they're in the business to make money. If they continue to lose money, that community suffers because they go somewhere else. That's what happened in San Francisco with the Targets, and the community suffers. So my question to you is, what can we do on the state level to protect these businesses? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And the safety of our customers as well as our employees is of most importance for us. I think just continuing to support law enforcement and provide resources for them to do their jobs. And then also this new organized retail crime unit within the AG's office would be very helpful. This would be statewide prosecutors that have multi-jurisdiction, and this would be someone that retailers could bring a case to. This would also give some relief to DAs throughout the case that have heavy caseloads and may not be able to take on some of this organized retail theft cases because they've got so many other violent crime cases. So this would just be another resource that the state could provide, and it would be statewide instead of local jurisdictions. Yeah.
Can I add? So absolutely. And I said I have multiple states that I oversee. Definitely the statewide task force aspect of things, because, and to your first question about prosecution, one of the most difficult things is actually getting all of the different crimes that have occurred to a district attorney and then getting them prosecuted through, right? But a lot of that falls into, there's 7 to 12 different jurisdictions that they've impacted. All of those pieces, they start to fall through the cracks as the process goes. So having a statewide entity that, and granted, 6 people for the entire state of Georgia, there's a lot of cases that they're gonna, they'll have to triage, but it would be a start, and it would be an ability to get some of the most prolific offenders and some of the individuals that are falling through the cracks on the multi-jurisdictional cases prosecuted to the fullest extent by the state, and not let some of those pieces fall. And then hopefully that also lets some of the other district attorneys, as these cases are pulled out of their jurisdictions and the AG's task force actually says, hey, we want these. A lot of other states, what we've seen is the district attorneys actually start to pay more attention, because now the AG's coming in and taking cases essentially from that jurisdiction. And now people start to ask the question, why? Why is the AG's office interested in this? Maybe we should prosecute it a little bit harder. We don't want those cases to leave our jurisdiction. And you start to see a little bit of almost a competition between the two, which in our business, that's great because we want people to pay attention. And then outside of that, I think just meetings like this where we can continue to talk about the issue. I know a lot of it has reference like what's on TV, and there's both sides on TV. So there's a lot of negative press right now that, you know, retailers are inflating the numbers and it's not really as trackable. But from living the day-to-day life, I can tell you that I promise it's happening. And then from a consumer perspective, you can definitely see it's happening when you go to the stores to check out.
If I can make a comment on that too, to this gentleman's first question, you know, just about success, we typically see better success when we have that collaboration and that partnership, and you see that in other states that have kind of done some of this task force work. Just to give you a local example, we talked about bringing people together. We had a statewide case, a southeast case that we were working, and we were able to, you know, we got a great detective out of Gwinnett County that wanted to take the lead on it. So we set up a meeting. We brought in all the major counties. We had the conversation. We were able to, you know, compile all of our cases for these counties, and whoever had the most would kind of go after it. And we were able to pull a violent group that was coming in and stealing from our stores and have success in that. But to Tim's point, that statewide ability to kind of bring that together, I believe we would start seeing success in getting some of those violent groups and some of those bigger groups out of our stores.
Super. Okay. Representative Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for this. I think a couple of weeks ago I saw on the news a sneaker store closed down from continuous hits, and they just couldn't keep up. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm asking, where does the money come from for the scholarships, and why are they only offered to 2 schools? Like, are HBCUs involved in this? Are they aware that this is that there are scholarships for this? And where does the funding come from for the scholarships?
Yeah, I can answer that. So the scholarship process, it's a long story. Both my kids went to Kennesaw State, and so they both were criminal justice majors, and so we had a partner there. So that's where we first started it.
All right.
And so we, over a period of time, we're just kind of routinely doing it with them. We stepped it up just this last year and brought in Georgia State to that. So our goal is to continue to bring in different colleges that have criminal justice type programs that we can support that. The money comes from typically the support of our vendor partners that we bring together for our annual conference. So
Awesome.
we're, you know, the retailers are all working, you know, to make money, but we're volunteer for the G-Rock piece. So
All right.
we try to bring that in
Appreciate
and do
it.
the scholarships.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
How many small businesses recover their goods? I see you get nearly $100,000 in recovery. How many of these small businesses are actually recovering their goods or getting their money back?
Yeah, to me, as a major retailer, what we see in the small businesses, it can be devastating,
Right.
For them. And so what we see, and I think Ben can probably talk a little bit about this as well, is there are a lot of times they don't. They have to shut down. I can think of several small businesses that I've seen, not related to what I do, but just have been involved in some sort of smash and grab, some sort of robbery, and they don't see recovery or anything on that. Do you have anything?
Appreciate it.
No, I would just agree. It's much tougher on our smaller businesses that have limited resources.
Great. Representative Hagan. Thank you. Number 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to remember what my question was right now. Going back to a few minutes ago when you mentioned that we've got adults that are using minors to go and do this work because the penalties might be less than if they were caught. We had, that's very concerning to me, that young people would be used in that way. But last year, we had a piece of legislation that passed out of the House that increased penalties for street gangs if they were targeting to recruit young people or people with developmental issues, disabilities. Thank you. And I right now don't remember if that passed out of the Senate or not. But regardless of whether it did, would legislation like that apply in a situation like this, or would you definitively have to identify known street affiliation by the adult with a known street gang for legislation like that to help in a situation like organized crime, theft?
I'm not exactly sure. That might be a better question for a prosecutor on that. I would think if the legislation you're talking about, you probably would have to have some kind of tie to a known criminal organization. But I'd be happy to work with you on that. I mean, that sounds like it could be something that may be beneficial, but I think I would like to get the weigh-in of a prosecutor on that, on how effective that would be.
I'd love to work with you
Yeah.
on something like that, because I feel like it's important that we make sure we're protecting our young people and adults with developmental disabilities, make sure they're not being targeted and used, and then themselves wind up prosecuted for something that they were manipulated into doing for the adults involved.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Cool, okay. Representative Bell?
Thank you, Chairman, for the acknowledgement. To the caveat of Representative Barnes, Savannah State is here today. If you guys want to create a partnership with them and our HBCUs to make sure that regardless of institution, that we have someone in the fight against organized crime. To the second point, I think it might have been answered by Representative Hagan. Has there been any proactive measures to work with local school districts to inform students of the dangers of engaging in organized crime, and specifically organized retail crime?
So we have a couple things that we do. If you noticed on our list of here, not only scholarships, but we do do have some partnership with some charitable organizations. One of them is Community Teen Coalition. So they've been a partner of us since Dominic and his team over there do a great job with the youth. And so we bring them in to the conferences, we bring them in for meetings, we go to them and talk about the issues that we're seeing. So we kind of have that part of it. As far as going out to schools, we're looking into that. We're always looking for ability to do that. One of our partners up through Kennesaw State goes out and does some high school stuff, and so we're looking to kind of get an opportunity to go in there and kind of have that conversation as well. So at this point, it's through that charitable organization with Community Teen that we do have that partnership that focuses on the kids and trying to help them understand that, you know, do business the right way and don't get caught up in this stuff.
Thank you for answering that. And you probably can find a partner in Clayton County for that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Representative Willis?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for bringing this. Much of what my colleagues have said resonates with me as well with regard to that legislation we saw last year, which was specific to sex trafficking. And then there's been some evolution from that victims of sex trafficking would or would not, be charged with certain crimes because they were under not only the duress but the control of someone else. I think what I'm hearing from the voice of my colleagues and what's important to me in my district with my high schools and middle schools specifically is that children are so vulnerable at certain ages, right? And they can be swept into lifestyles and lives of crime based upon economic status, desperation, etc. I think that it would be even more beneficial because these numbers are alarming that 76% of the retailers report physical assault on their employees by organized retail crime offenders. That is alarming. That is most. I think that in tandem with the college scholarship offerings for criminal justice majors, which we do have at our HBCUs with the exception, I believe, of Spelman, high school students would greatly benefit and could be encouraged to go into criminal justice majors in college if they were even aware that there was an organized retail crime. 2, that they were aware of the dangers of it. But you said you're going after the bigger fish. So my specific question is, what is the mechanism in place to filter and identify the fencers, as you call them, or the boosters, versus the young people that they send out to perpetuate the crimes? I would like to know how evolved is that layer of it, because that would be most concerning to me, is how that distinction is made, and then how we reach our younger people sooner with this crisis, and then catch them on the college level as well. Thank you.
Take that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. So as far as like how we weed it out, every company would be a little bit different. But basically, one of the biggest factors would be based on frequency of impact. So how many times, if you will, a week this subject or individual impacts us. The other part would be like quantity of goods. So we look for large quantities being stolen that are indicative of resale. And then our goal when we apprehend that individual is to find out what's happening with the merchandise. So through an interview we would conduct and any information that they would provide, and then our goal through the prosecution process of that would be to this individual is cooperative, this individual, working all the way through the process to see, in the best case scenario, we would get them signed up with law enforcement as a confidential informant and go through that process. And then, we would also partner with the prosecution, because I said our goal is to make the retailer whole. So this individual that we've already caught, this individual who now is giving us additional information, they play into the puzzle that we're trying to solve, which is that bigger fish. So we would work all the way up to the prosecution aspect of that and say, hey, this person was extremely cooperative, we recovered our goods. 9 times out of 10, the prosecutor's already looking to deal that case anyway. So that's how we would try to kind of mitigate that through gaining that intel. Doesn't always go that cleanly, doesn't always work that way. For one specific example, we have a subject that I worked an investigation on for 2 years. This individual brought out 3 or 4 other people, and they would travel throughout the United States multiple times a week, stealing shirts, jeans, and then they would send it back to a certain city and it was resold there. How we track that individual is through a variety of different ways. It would be through our store teams telling us he's in the store. It would be through law enforcement providing any rental information or vehicle information that we have on that person. So it's a variety of different, and we've really gotten to the technology aspect of things over the years, leveraging LPR readers and different camera technologies, just to continue to work smarter as these criminals continue to evolve. I don't know if that fully answered, but I'll just.
It gives a level of clarification, because my initial response was, where does the evolution of technology fit into this?
Yeah,
Number
absolutely.
one. Number two, yes, in a perfect world, a 15-year-old would be extremely cooperative with you. Before that 15-year-old that fears for his or her safety and has been swept into a life of perpetual crime. That is not the best case scenario from the onset. So my specific question, and something that I'll continue to monitor, is what is the actual filtration process to identify victims that have been, attracted into this lifestyle, that are not in a position to make decisions for themselves, versus the organizers of the full cells who are moving merchandise to another town to sell it and profit. That sounds like an organized network. Totally tracking on that.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing and seeing and witnessing are young people. And so that is my major concern. It's just how we're separating those two. And, to some that may not matter, but I think to many it does, because kids make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not answered, but I'll continue to track it.
Yeah.
But thank you for your attempt.
Yeah,
Thank you. All right. Chairman Williams.
I tell you, I think we're missing the big picture. What happened when we were in school, some of us with white hair, some of us that are older, if you messed up, you'd get your little behind torn up. And instead of saying, oh, it's okay, if we stop it from the get-go before they get older and get into the life of crime, it's a simple issue. We have got to have tougher love on these kids. And if it's a single-parent family, well, we had recreation ball, and we had coaches that would get onto you if you stepped out of line. I know I was in a store in my hometown, and at Home Depot, they were talking about if they saw someone taking something out of the store, they could not stop them. They could not tackle them or apprehend them. They would just say, hey, sir, you need to pay for that. Hey, I'm like, what? Why do you not, call the police or do something? We're allowing this to happen. Is the answer to build more jails, throw them in jail, or tear their behinds up when they're young and when they do wrong, because you spare the rod, you spoil the kid. You spare the rod, or you spoil the kid. Common sense here, people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I do want to touch on just the aspect of a lot of our retailers, they all have different policies when it comes to interacting with someone that's coming in to steal. And part of the reason a lot of them have the policies that they don't do anything to stop them is because we've seen that increased violence, and many of them have had employees that have lost their lives trying to intervene on that. And really, the safety of our employees is more important than the products that are being sold.
We keep seeing these things play on the news with these kids going in, breaking windows and stealing watches and shoes and everything, and nothing happens to them. That's going to keep happening. We've got to stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a lot of what our organization is working to combat this, working with law enforcement, making sure we're educating prosecutors throughout the state about the issue and the difference between organized retail crime and just shoplifting. And then also just this new unit within the AG's office, I think, would bring a lot to help with statewide prosecutions of some of these rings. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to, point of privilege, I'm going to break in line and make a couple of comments. And I really appreciate all the questions. I appreciate the interest. And there's two things that I want the members of the committee to hear or think about. And these are from personal experiences, because I have been assaulted in my retail establishment. There's a lot, when I talk with other retailers, and to address your issue, you're saying, why don't we stop them? There's a lot of lawsuit issues here. And we've read them in the papers where someone is apprehended for stealing and then they sue the store, and a very sympathetic jury awards them multi-million dollars when they were breaking the law to begin with. We may want to look at if someone is convicted of a crime, limit their ability to sue. That may be something we want to look at. The other thing that we may want to look at is 3 strikes and you're out. If this is repeat occurrence, repeat offense, and the way I see it is organized retail crime has become a business. And it is being promoted as a business. And unless we can put some folks in jail and keep them there. And I'll finish with a story from my hometown where we had a situation where someone was stealing some things. And in a small community, people know everybody. And they saw the perpetrator's picture on the security cameras. And the law enforcement officer says, I can't believe it, he's already out of jail. They knew the offender. They'd already, they knew, his method of stealing, and so they even knew who it was and this and that and the other. So with that being said, I'm sorry I broke in line, but who's next? Sharper. Thank you, Representative Sharper.
No, thank you, Chairman. Just listening to everybody about, what the solution may be, and we're doing a lot of things after the fact. With Plaza and Valdosta, and I got a call that somebody did that, in one of the buildings this week. And then it was the same building like 3 months ago, because it's a very open building. They bust in, get things. But looking at solutions and what we have to do as a body as a whole, we see the single parent situation financially. But another big piece that we're missing is the financial literacy at a very young age, elementary, at middle school. Financial literacy is one thing. I don't care how many degrees you have. I don't care what school you went to. A lot of people are still broke week after week because there's so much taught about math, English, social studies, all these different things. But financial literacy is the biggest thing missing in our society. And until we fix that problem, all these kids that's going out doing this, if they don't know, if their parents don't know financial literacy and all they know is, I'm trying to help mom, I'm trying to, help provide for the family, for my little brothers and my little sisters, I got to do what I got to do. It's no getting a spanking. Okay, a lot of parents are even scared of their kids of what they're doing and getting involved in these different organization, gang, organized groups. But the source is financial literacy. There are people everywhere, paycheck to paycheck. And they're one way from doing some type of crime, even as an adult, let alone these kids that don't have a father maybe in the home. They don't have a rich uncle or aunt or somebody can say, look, I want these shoes or I want this or I want that. So we as a body got to get, I would say very aggressive on financial literacy. If not, we're going to be spinning our wheels. But I just want to make that comment. I know financial literacy. I know the power of it. And I know that it's needed and we need to do something. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All right, Representative Bell.
Thanks for the comment, Representative Sharper. My comment along the line of that, has anything be done, more preemptive again? It seems like crime, financial literacy, whatever you want to call it, is an ill of poverty. Has there been anything to look into possibly education and training, again, at the high school level, the middle school level, or even the elementary school level, or even possibly some anti-food insecurity policies or programs that you're looking at to really stop the ill of this? And to me, it's basically poverty. People need somewhere to eat, sleep, and this seems like organized crime is providing a way for people to have somewhere to eat and somewhere to sleep. Something to eat and somewhere to sleep. So has there been any looks at possibly poverty combat?
I'm sure there probably has, not necessarily from our organization. All of our people are, they work for retailers. They're on a volunteer basis with limited resources. So I know that we've talked about the different partnerships that we have with the colleges and then as well as some of the high school organizations. But I mean, it'd be something we'd be happy to look into. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Representative Aldezana. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, thank you all for presenting as well. Everyone has made a great point, and I observed that we have different perspectives as how to deal with this theft and crime issue on the retail level. I have a restaurant, and I see customers sometimes get their orders on their way out. The merchandiser that I have in the front of my store, they just, cuff a little item and throw it in the bag. I see that all the time from the cameras. But Representative Williams made a point, which part of them I agree with. I don't think we should, now, I am empathetic about retail stores losing items and money. But, I just don't know if over-criminalizing is a solution. And the reason why I say that is this. We have to look at the point Representative Sharper made of a single mother headed household, right? Those have a big impact. And I also know that parents have to do a better job at, to his point, training these kids and making sure the kids don't get a leeway with bad habits, because it starts from home. So now this is just a comment, not a question for you all, but we as legislators, we've got to be looking at solutions where schools, are running at an optimal level. Kids are learning as they should, not, defund schools further, or take money from schools further. And also, we also have to, as legislators, we have to also make sure that we support communities that needs resources and this help. I am very confident that can help, and rather than just finding the 3-strike rule school and keeping people in jail. I mean, I'm not supporting the crime, but hopefully we can start using a different method. But you can chime in if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can attack the issue, but I do not think we're over criminalizing this, because we are talking about the difference, not just your people shoplifting. We're talking about organizations that are sophisticated, that are going out specifically targeting items that they can sell. Most of the time, these organizations are using this money to fund other criminal activity, drugs, human trafficking. We see it all tied together. So in this instance, we're not trying to go after your person that's maybe living in poverty, that's stealing off the shelf to eat. We're talking about organizations that are preying on those type of people to get them to steal, and then using that funding to fund other criminal activity. Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank our presenters for bringing this to our attention. And Ben, let's get together and see if we can find some solutions. And members of the committee, I would like to commend you for y'all's robust questions. It's great. Let's continue this conversation, and let's see if we can, as they say, take a bite out of crime.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank y'all for your time, and thank you for your interest.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.